Hello and welcome to the English Learners. I am Sarah, and I'm delighted to have you join me once again, as we dive deeper into English listening and speaking for intermediate learners. In today's extended session, we will explore how real-life stories and everyday conversations can transform your language skills, not only in listening, but also in writing. Our channel uploads videos every day to help you improve your English step by step. And if you are new here, I invite you to become part of our community and experience the joy of learning with real stories and practical examples. Have you ever paused in the middle of a conversation and realized that every word carries a hidden meaning or a lesson waiting to be learned? Today, I want to take you on a journey that spans busy city streets, quiet cafes, and lively gatherings, where each interaction is an opportunity to learn. Imagine listening to a friend describe a long-forgotten memory, or a colleague explaining how they overcame a challenge at work. Each of these stories holds a wealth of vocabulary, natural expressions, and insights into the rhythm of spoken English. Together, we will uncover these treasures and learn to incorporate them into our own language practice. I would like to begin with a story from my early travels in Lisbon. I remember walking through the narrow, cobbled streets, where I met a man named Jorge, a local musician known for his soulful fado performances. Jorge invited me to sit with him on a small bench near his favorite cafe. As he played his guitar and sang, he explained the history behind each song, the emotions that inspired him and the local idioms that had evolved over decades. His voice was calm and measured, and every word he spoke was filled with passion and care. I listened carefully as he used simple phrases like, "The heart speaks," and "Life is a melody." That day, I learned not only new vocabulary related to music and emotion, but also how to express feelings in a clear and poetic manner. Jorge's story reminded me that every conversation can serve as a lesson if we are open to listening and absorbing the nuances of language. During another memorable encounter in New York City, I met a woman named Rebecca at a community event dedicated to cultural exchange. Rebecca, a graphic designer by profession, shared how she learned English by immersing herself in the vibrant art scene of the city. She talked about attending gallery openings, listening to the diverse stories of artists, and even engaging in impromptu discussions with strangers who had become friends over time. Rebecca explained that every conversation, whether in a busy museum or at a quiet park bench, taught her how to describe the world around her with precision. She recalled a specific instance when she was discussing a painting that depicted urban life. A fellow art enthusiast mentioned how the artist used bold strokes and vivid contrasts to capture the essence of the city. That simple exchange opened Rebecca's eyes to the power of descriptive language and motivated her to write her own reviews and reflections. Her experience teaches us that real-life dialogue offers practical vocabulary and stylistic tips that textbooks often overlook. Let's travel now to a small town in Canada where I spent an afternoon at a local market. There, I encountered a friendly vendor named Mark, who ran a stall selling handmade crafts. Mark had a unique way of storytelling. He would greet every customer with a warm smile and share the backstory of each item he sold. I remember him describing a hand-carved wooden bowl by saying, "This bowl was made by my grandfather, using techniques passed down through generations." Each mark on the wood tells a story of family, tradition, and love. Listening to him, I noticed how he used vivid imagery to bring the object to life. He carefully chose adjectives that conveyed both the physical beauty and the sentimental value of the item. This simple narrative not only improved my listening skills, but also enriched my writing vocabulary. I began to appreciate how describing objects and experiences in a personal way could transform ordinary descriptions into engaging stories. In another part of the world, in a busy city in Australia, I met Liam, an enthusiastic teacher, who believed in the power of storytelling for learning. Liam organized small group discussions at a local library where people shared stories about their lives. In one session, a participant named Chloe recounted a challenging experience she had during a hiking trip in the outback. She described the vast open spaces, the clear blue skies, and the sudden change in weather that left her both awed and anxious. As she narrated her journey, Chloe used phrases such as, "a sudden burst of wind," and "the calm before the storm." Her story was not just a travel account, it was a lesson in using precise language to evoke strong images and emotions. I remember thinking that every descriptive detail could be a building block for better writing. Chloe's ability to blend adventure with emotion and detail reminded me that listening carefully to the stories of others can offer valuable insights into the art of narrative and expression. I also want to share an experience from my own life that took place during a local community gathering in my hometown. I met a group of people who came together every week to discuss a book they were reading. Among them was a man named Robert, who had a knack for explaining complex ideas in simple language. During one of the meetings, Robert shared his thoughts on a book about overcoming challenges. He spoke slowly and clearly, breaking down difficult concepts into phrases that everyone could understand. His method was to pause between sentences and ask questions to ensure that everyone was following along. As I listened, I realized that the clarity in his speech was a result of active listening and careful planning. Robert's approach taught me that improving language skills is not only about absorbing new vocabulary, but also about understanding how to structure thoughts logically. His example has stayed with me, and I often find myself practicing the technique of pausing and reflecting when I speak or write. Another remarkable story comes from a conversation I had with a young entrepreneur named Lisa in Singapore. Lisa had recently moved to an English-speaking country and initially struggled with the language barrier. Determined to overcome her challenges, she started recording short videos where she shared her daily experiences in the city. One day she uploaded a video describing her morning routine, where she mentioned simple things like the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft light of the early sun. Lisa's careful choice of words and her ability to paint a picture with her descriptions captured the attention of many viewers. She explained that each video was an opportunity to practice not only her speaking, but also her writing skills, as she later transcribed her recordings and revised them. Lisa's journey demonstrated that even everyday routines can serve as powerful tools for learning, provided we listen carefully to how we express ourselves and then reflect on our language use. Let's explore the idea of active listening further. Active listening is a method where you fully concentrate on the speaker, absorbing every detail of their message and then reflecting on what you have heard. For example, imagine you are at a bustling cafe where you overhear a conversation between two friends planning a weekend trip. Instead of merely hearing the words, you pay attention to how they use phrases like, "Let's catch the early train," or "We could visit the historic museum." Each phrase carries a particular meaning and context that can enrich your own vocabulary. I often encourage my listeners to practice this by pausing a podcast or a video and jotting down interesting expressions. Later, try to use those expressions in your writing or casual conversations. This method of learning transforms passive listening into an interactive exercise, helping you internalize the language more effectively. In addition to active listening, another technique I recommend is shadowing. Shadowing involves listening to a sentence or short passage, and then repeating it aloud as accurately as possible. This practice helps you get familiar with the natural flow of English, including its rhythm and intonation. I recall practicing shadowing during a lecture on public speaking where the speaker narrated an inspiring story about overcoming adversity. I repeated his words, paying close attention to his tone and pace. Over time, I noticed that my pronunciation improved and my speaking felt more natural. Shadowing not only reinforces there is also value in reflective writing. After listening to a story, take some time to write a brief summary of what you have heard. This exercise reinforces your understanding and helps you organize your thoughts. I once participated in a reflective writing workshop where participants listened to a recorded narrative about a community rebuilding after a natural disaster. After the recording, we spent 15 minutes writing down our reflections. This simple practice allowed us to process the information and later discuss it in a group setting. The exercise demonstrated that writing about what you hear is a powerful method to solidify your learning. When you write, you practice structuring sentences, using appropriate vocabulary, and conveying emotions, all of which are essential for effective communication. Another inspiring story comes from a language club in Berlin, where I met a young man named Alex. Alex was a passionate learner who had recently joined the club to improve his English skills. During one meeting, he shared his experience of getting lost in the maze-like streets of a historic district and asking for directions from locals. The locals' responses were filled with friendly advice, including phrases like, "Take a left at the old clock tower and follow the river until you see the park." Alex recalled feeling grateful for the clear and kind instructions, and he noted that his experience taught him the value of listening carefully to in conversation. Alex's story reminds us that even unexpected challenges, such as getting lost in a new city, can turn into valuable lessons if we remain open to learning from the situation. His ability to extract learning points from everyday occurrences is a model for all of us striving to improve our English. As we continue to explore these varied experiences, I encourage you to think about how you can apply these techniques in your daily life. Consider setting aside a few minutes each day to listen to a short story, a news segment, or even a conversation between friends. Try to notice the details, the pace, the emphasis on certain words, and the way ideas are connected. When you do this regularly, you will start to notice patterns that can help you predict how sentences are structured and how ideas flow naturally. This deeper understanding of language will make your writing more coherent and your conversations more engaging. I also want to share a series of practical exercises that you can try on your own. One exercise is to choose a short video clip from a movie or a TV show and watch it without subtitles. Focus solely on the speaker's voice, the pauses between sentences, and the overall tone. After watching, write down what you remember and compare your notes with a transcript if available. Another exercise is to record yourself reading a passage aloud. Then, listen to the recording and identify areas where your pronunciation or intonation could improve. These exercises are designed to be simple yet effective ways to train your ear and your voice simultaneously. In a recent conversation with my friend Karen from Sydney, she mentioned that one of the best ways to improve language skills is by engaging in community activities. Karen regularly attends local meetups where people share stories about their personal and professional lives. During one such event, she listened to an elderly gentleman describe his experiences as a sailor in his youth. The man used vivid language, recalling the sound of the ocean waves and the feel of the wind as it carried him across vast distances. Karen later told me that the storyteller's careful choice of words and the natural pauses in his speech made a lasting impression on her. Inspired by this encounter, Karen began to incorporate storytelling techniques into her own daily conversations. She found that by consciously paying attention to how others speak, she could improve both her vocabulary and her ability to express ideas clearly. Her experience reinforces the idea that community interaction and real-life stories are invaluable resources for language improvement. Let me share another example from my time in a multicultural neighborhood in Toronto. I attended an informal dinner party hosted by a neighbor named Samuel, who was known for his culinary skills and his love for languages. At the dinner, guests from different backgrounds shared stories about their family traditions and cultural heritage. One guest, a woman named Fatima, recounted how her family celebrated a traditional festival with songs, dances, and rich storytelling. Fatima's narrative was filled with expressions that were unique to her culture, and as I listened, I made a mental note of the words and phrases that captured the spirit of celebration. This experience showed me that language learning is not just about grammar and vocabulary. It is also about understanding the cultural context that gives words their full meaning. Every story, every shared meal, and every conversation adds a new layer to our understanding of English and the world. It describes. There is also a technical aspect to listening that we should consider. When we listen actively, we learn to recognize the natural rhythm of language. For instance, the way speakers link words together in fluent speech can reveal patterns in pronunciation that are not obvious from written text. I remember working with a colleague, James, who was training for public speaking. James practiced by listening to recordings of famous speeches, and then imitating the flow and cadence of the speakers. Over time, he became adept at blending words smoothly, making his speech sound more natural and persuasive. His method was simple. Listen, imitate, and repeat. This practice of matching the rhythm of native speakers can dramatically improve your overall fluency. When you listen actively, you begin to internalize these patterns, and eventually, your own speaking and writing will reflect that natural flow. Another helpful technique is to engage in dialogue journaling. This is where you record a conversation you had or heard, and then write it down as a dialogue. By doing this, you are forced to pay attention to the pauses and the natural progression of ideas. I once practiced dialogue journaling after attending a community lecture. I wrote down the exchange between the speaker and the audience, noting how questions were posed and answered. Reviewing this dialogue later helped me understand the structure of effective communication. I began to see how a well-placed question can lead to a deeper discussion, and how the structure of dialogue can enhance clarity in writing. I also want to emphasize the importance of context when learning a language. Words and phrases often change meaning depending on the situation in which they are used. For example, a simple greeting like, "Good morning," can set the tone for a friendly conversation in one context, while in another situation, it might be part of a more formal interaction. I recall a situation in a bustling market in Bangkok, where a vendor named Suya greeted each customer warmly, and then used local expressions to describe his products. His ability to switch between casual and formal language depending on the context was fascinating to observe. By paying attention to these shifts, you can learn to adapt your language to suit different situations, whether you are writing a friendly email or giving a presentation. Consider also the power of feedback in your learning process. After a conversation or a listening exercise, try discussing your thoughts with a friend or a mentor who is also learning English. Sharing interpretations of a story or debating the best way to express an idea can offer new perspectives and help reinforce your learning. I remember organizing small discussion groups where we would listen to a short story together and then talk about it. These discussions were rich with insights, as each person contributed their unique understanding of the language. The collective feedback not only clarified doubts, but also opened up new ways of thinking about language structure and expression. As you listen to these stories and practice these techniques, I encourage you to reflect on your own progress. Think about the moments when you first noticed improvement in your ability to follow a conversation, or when you felt more confident writing a detailed account of an experience. These moments are significant milestones on your language journey. Every story you hear, every conversation you engage in, and every note you jot down contributes to your growth as an English speaker and writer. I invite you now to picture yourself in these diverse settings. A quaint cafe in Lisbon, a lively market in Canada, a cultural dinner party in Toronto, or a community gathering in Berlin. In each scenario, listen for the small details. The friendly tone of a greeting, the descriptive language that paints a picture, the rhythm and flow that bring words to life. These details are the building blocks of effective communication. They help you understand not just the meaning of the words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. Imagine that you are now in a quiet room with a notebook in hand. As you listen to a recorded conversation, or a personal story, write down the expressions that stand out to you. Perhaps you hear a phrase like a burst of laughter that filled the room, or a moment of silence that spoke louder than words. Write these phrases down and try to use them in your own sentences later. This practice will help you remember new vocabulary and understand how to use it appropriately in different contexts. Throughout this session, we have explored multiple stories from different parts of the world, each offering a unique lesson in listening and speaking. From the soulful melodies of Jorge in Lisbon to the vibrant art discussions with Rebecca in New York, from Mark's heartfelt descriptions in Canada to Chloe's adventurous tales in Australia, every narrative provides a window into the diverse ways in which language is used. These stories remind us that language is not static. It is a living, evolving means of communication that adapts to every situation and every emotion. As you continue on your learning journey, always be open to new experiences and new stories. Remember that every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new. The techniques we have discussed today, active listening, shadowing, reflective writing, dialogue journaling, and seeking feedback, are all tools that can help you unlock the full potential of your English skills. Use them regularly and you will find that not only does your listening improve, but your writing becomes richer and more expressive. I encourage you to experiment with these practices. Try recording your own stories or discussing a favorite memory with a friend. Listen to podcasts, watch videos without subtitles, and then challenge yourself to summarize what you have heard in writing. Each of these exercises is designed to help you build a bridge between what you hear and what you express. The more you practice, the more naturally these skills will come to you and you will begin to see a significant transformation in the way you communicate. Consider the countless opportunities around you every day to practice English. Whether you are commuting on a train, sitting in a park, or even cooking at home, there are always moments when you can listen to a conversation or engage in a dialogue. Embrace these moments as chances to learn. Pay attention to the subtleties of language, the slight variations in tone, and the context in which words are used. This attentiveness will help you build a solid foundation for both your spoken and written English. Now imagine creating your own story, a narrative that reflects your experiences, challenges, and triumphs in learning English. Think of a time when you felt a breakthrough moment, perhaps when a conversation finally made sense, or when you wrote a piece that you were proud of. Write that story down, describe it in detail, and share it with someone who can appreciate your progress. In doing so, you not only practice your writing skills, but also reinforce the lessons you have learned through listening. Your personal story, like those we have explored today, can inspire others and become a valuable part of your language learning journey. As we continue this immersive exploration, I invite you to focus on the simplicity of language. Often, the most effective communication is achieved with clear, concise language that avoids unnecessary complexity. When you listen to native speakers, notice how they often use straightforward language to convey deep meaning. This simplicity does not diminish the power of their message. Instead, it makes the message accessible and relatable. Practice using simple yet expressive language in your writing and speaking. This will help you connect with your audience and ensure that your message is understood clearly. Reflect on the importance of consistency in your practice. Just as a musician practices scales daily to master an instrument, your language skills improve with regular, focused practice. Set aside a dedicated time each day to listen, write, and speak English. Over time, these small, consistent efforts will compound into significant improvement. Remember that every day is a new opportunity to learn, and every conversation holds the potential to make you a better speaker and writer. Let's continue by exploring another powerful aspect of language learning, the art of asking questions. Questions not only help you gather more information, but also encourage you to think critically about what you hear. For example, consider a conversation I had with a curious student named Olivia during a casual meetup at a local park. Olivia was fascinated by a story a fellow learner shared about a community garden project. As the speaker explained how the garden brought people together and revived a neglected neighborhood, Olivia interjected with thoughtful questions like, "What motivated you to start this project? And how did you overcome the initial challenges?" These questions opened up a deeper dialogue, revealing insights about perseverance, community spirit, and even local customs. By listening to the responses and reflecting on the discussion, Olivia not only expanded her vocabulary, but also learned how to structure her own questions effectively. This practice of engaging actively through questions is a wonderful way to develop both your listening and speaking skills. Another useful strategy is to immerse yourself in different accents and dialects. Language is wonderfully diverse, and every accent carries its own musicality and unique expressions. I remember an encounter with a group of travelers from various parts of the world during a long train journey. Among them was Raj, whose clear and steady accent introduced me to some delightful idioms from his region. As he explained an expression that meant, "to take life as it comes," I made a note of the rhythm and intonation he used. Later, while practicing shadowing with recordings from different sources, I compared Raj's way of speaking with that of another speaker from a different region. This exercise not only broadened my understanding of English, but also made me appreciate the rich variety within the language. I encourage you to explore podcasts, audiobooks, or even films from various English-speaking countries. By exposing yourself to different accents, you'll develop a more flexible ear and improve your ability to understand a wider range of speakers. Let's shift our focus to the interplay between listening and writing. Often, the words you hear in conversation can be the seeds of creative writing. One inspiring story comes from my interaction with a novelist named Benjamin at a literary cafe in Dublin. Benjamin explained that his best ideas often came from snippets of overheard conversations or fleeting moments in public spaces. One afternoon, he overheard a brief exchange between two strangers discussing a mysterious package that had just arrived by mail. The dialogue, though simple, sparked his imagination and led him to write an entire short story filled with suspense and intrigue. By paying close attention to how the conversation unfolded, the pauses, the inflections, and even the silence between words, Benjamin was able to craft vivid scenes and dynamic characters. This experience taught me that writing can be a natural extension of listening. When you listen carefully, you capture not just words, but the emotions and subtexts that give life to a story. Consider trying this exercise yourself. Listen to a short conversation, or a piece of dialogue, jot down key phrases, and then use them as a foundation for a creative piece. Another interesting method to enhance your skills is by exploring different forms of media that combine visual and auditory elements. For instance, watching documentaries or travel videos can provide a rich context that supports your listening. Practice. I recall watching a documentary about life in rural India, where the narrator's clear and descriptive language painted a vivid picture of the landscape and daily routines. The documentary not only improved my listening comprehension, but also enriched my understanding of cultural context. I took notes on descriptive adjectives and expressions used by both the narrator and the interviewees, which later helped me craft more engaging descriptions in my own writing. When you watch such content, pause frequently to repeat what you hear or to write down new expressions. This active engagement turns passive viewing into an interactive learning experience. There is also great value in revisiting and discussing your favorite stories with others. Dialogue and discussion provide opportunities to explore different interpretations and to clarify any misunderstandings. In one memorable session with a study group, we each shared a personal story about a time when listening deeply changed our perspective. One member, Daniel, described a moment when a simple conversation with a neighbor led him to reconsider his approach to a long-held problem. As we discussed his narrative, each person contributed thoughts about the language used and the structure of his account. This collective reflection not only reinforced our understanding of the words and expressions, but also built our confidence in articulating our own experiences. I suggest that you find a partner or a group of peers with whom you can regularly discuss short stories or podcast episodes.